when I had started the journey of writing this book, I didn't understand that half of the battle was trying to get the interviews with Bill Gates. The other half was dealing with my internal flinch. I call it the flinch. When I was young, it started out as my fear of being seen as different. And as I grew older, the flinch really grew with me. My fear of rejection, my fear of failure, my fear of making mistakes. It's dealing with your own flinch that's the hardest part of achieving any dream. So to take you to the beginning, I have to take you back 7 years. I was 18 years old, a freshman in college, and I was spending every day lying on my dorm room bed, staring up at the ceiling. So now not only do I not know what I want to do with my life, I have no idea how all these people who I looked up to, how they did it. This is what they don't teach you in school. So I just assumed there had to be a book with the answers. So I'm going to the library and I'm just, ripping through business books and biographies and self-help books, assuming there had to be a book that focused on this stage in life. So how did they find a way to break through? And eventually I was left empty-handed, so that's when my naive 18-year-old thinking kicked in, and I thought, well, if no one's written the book I'm dreaming of reading, why not write it myself? I thought it would be super simple. I would call Bill Gates, interview him, interview everybody else, and I'd be done in a few months. That I assumed would be the easy part. The hard part, I figured, was getting the money to fund this journey. I was buried in student loan debt. I was all out of bar mitzvah cash. So there had to be a way to make some quick money. So 2 nights before final exams, I'm in the library doing what everyone's doing in the library right before finals. I'm on Facebook. And I'm on Facebook and I see someone offering free tickets to The Price is Right. And my first thought is, what if I go on the show and win some money to fund this book? Not my brightest moment. Plus, I had a problem. I'd never really seen a full episode of the show before. But I don't know if you guys have ever had one of these moments where an idea just keeps clawing itself back into your mind, no matter how much you tell yourself to stop thinking about it. So to prove to myself it was a bad idea, I remember, I'm sitting at this little round wooden table in the corner of the library, and I open up my spiral notebook to write the best and worst case scenarios, to prove to myself it's a bad idea. And I remember writing, worst case scenario, fail finals, get kicked out of pre-med, lose financial aid, mom stops talking to me, no, mom kills me. There's like 20 cons, and the only pro was maybe win enough money to fund this dream. So that night, I decided to do the logical thing and pull an all-nighter to study. But I didn't study for finals, I studied how to hack The Price is Right. And, during my all-nighter, I found out The Price is Right isn't exactly what it seems. You watch the show and they're like, Alex, come on down, as if they pulled your name out of a hat. But what I learned is that there's actually a producer who interviews every single person in the audience before the show begins. And then on top of that, there's an undercover producer who's planted in the audience who then confirms or denies the original producer's selection. So like everything in life, there's a system to it. It's not just luck. Anyone who's seen the show for 30 seconds knows the contestants are colorfully dressed. So, I swing open my closet and I pull out a bright red shirt and a big puffy jacket and neon yellow sunglasses. I look like a chubby toucan. It's perfect. I get to the CBS studio and, I have no idea who the undercover producer is. So I just assume everyone is. So I get there and I'm dancing with old ladies. I'm flirting with custodians. I'm breakdancing and I don't know how to breakdance. Finally, outside of the studio, I'm standing there and there's my guy. I instantly know that's Stan, because I did all this research the night before. I knew he's the head casting producer. I knew where he went to school, where he grew up. And I know that Stan has a clipboard, but it's never in his hands. His assistant, who sits about 10 feet away from him, is holding it. And if Stan likes you, he'll ask you a few more questions. And if he really likes you, he'll turn around, wink, and she'll put your name on the clipboard. So if The Price is Right is a nightclub, Stan is the bouncer. It's finally my turn, and I'm like, he's like, what's your name, where are you from, what do you do? And I'm like, hey, I'm Alex. I'm 18 years old. I'm a freshman in college. And his assistant makes a mark on the clipboard. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm walking around, and now, I'm moving through the audience. We're still outside the studio doors, and I notice a young woman with long brown hair, and she's looking at everyone's name badge. And then I notice there's a laminated badge in her back pocket. And I figure she has to be the undercover producer. So, I had just come out of puberty at that point. I'm blowing her kisses, and she's laughing, and I'm dancing, and she's laughing a bit more. She looks at my name badge, takes a sheet of paper out of her pocket, and makes another mark. So at this point, I'm feeling really good. I'm standing outside the studio, and it dawns on me that I had spent the entire all-nighter studying how to get on the show. I still didn't know how to play. But, no big deal. It's not rocket science. I take out my phone and I Google how to play Price is Right. 30 seconds later, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and security takes my phone away. And, I had no plan B. And I remember there was this cold metal bench outside of the studio. And I remember sitting down next to this old lady, really sweet, white hair, and I'm just sulking. And she looks at me and she's like, she asked me what the matter is, and I just start venting. I tell her about finals, I tell her about pre-med, I tell her I've never seen a full episode of the show before, and she just pinches my cheek and she's like, honey, you remind me of my grandson. And I'm like, do you have any advice on The Price is Right? And she's like, sweetie, I've been watching the show for 40 years. And, literally she starts telling me decades of wisdom in a matter of minutes, and right then, the doors to the studio open.
Here it comes from the famous Bob Barker studio in Hollywood. It's The Price is Right.
Alex Banayan, come on down, and I lose my shit. You run up there, I'm hugging strangers. I have no idea what's going on, but I know the audience is cheering. I'm loving it. I get to my podium, and I don't care how cool you think you are. There's no way to be calm in this moment. And I ended up winning the whole showcase showdown, winning a sailboat, selling the sailboat, and that's how I funded the book. So for the past 7 years, I've been obsessively studying success. I've spent thousands of hours researching, going through hundreds of biographies, and most importantly, sitting down one-on-one, asking questions to the people I was dying to get answers from. So for business, I spoke to Bill Gates. For music, Lady Gaga. Science, Jane Goodall. Poetry, Maya Angelou. Jessica Alba, Larry King, Quincy Jones, Steve Wozniak. It's been this unbelievable journey filled with surprising lessons at every turn. When I had started this journey, first of all, I had no idea it would take 7 years to come to fruition. And when I had started, there was no part of me that wanted to find that one key to success. To me, I don't know if any of you are big music fans, but it was almost like there was a common melody in every single conversation I was having. The analogy that came to me is that every single person, they all treated life and business and success the exact same way. And it was sort of like getting into a nightclub. There's always 3 ways in. So there's the first door, the main entrance, where the line curves around the block, where 99% of people wait in line hoping to get in. That's where people just stand there hoping the bouncer picks them and calls them in. And then there's the second door, the VIP entrance, where the billionaires and celebrities go through. And for some reason, society has this way of making us feel like those are the only 2 ways in. You're either born into it or you wait your turn like everybody else. But what I've learned is that there's always the third door. And it's the entrance where you jump out of line, run down an alley, bang on the door 100 times, crack open the window, go through the kitchen. There's always a way in. And it doesn't matter if that's how Bill Gates sold his first piece of software or how Spielberg became the youngest director in Hollywood history. They all took the third door. When I had started this journey, I thought there just had to be an essence of fearlessness in all of these people. You look at Bill Gates or you look at Elon Musk, they had to be fearless. And we have this preconceived notion that fear means that there's something wrong with what you're doing. You know, as the book has taken off, there's been this one question that has sort of felt a little weird, and it was, people have been asking, what's your favorite interview? There was only one interview where I can confidently say, I walked in one person and I walked out another. And that was with Quincy Jones. I knew that he's, the best-selling music producer in history. He produced Michael Jackson's Thriller. He produced the best-selling single of all time, We Are the World. I knew that he's been nominated for more Grammys than any music producer in history. And he looked in my eyes and he said, 99% of people treat their mistakes as their biggest enemy. And that's the worst thing you can do. He explained to me that most people hate their failures. They hate their mistakes, and they treat them as their enemy. And in that moment, I had this epiphany that to this day, I'll never forget. I realized I had spent my entire journey assuming that the opposite of success is failure. But it wasn't until I was sitting there with Quincy Jones that I realized that success and failure are actually the result of the same thing, trying. And in that moment, I realized that the opposite of success isn't failure. The opposite of success is not trying. And in that moment, I swore to myself that from now on, I would be unattached to succeeding and unattached to failing. And instead, I'll be committed to trying and growing. Only when you acknowledge your fear can you then decide to take one step forward anyways.